Today, we're going to talk about how to design privacy plantings, what kinds of plants you should look for, and how to design them into your yard in a way that maximizes privacy and in a way that lasts. To design a privacy screen, a hedgerow, or just to incorporate privacy plantings into your garden or yard in a strategic way, the first thing to do is get ideas down on paper. I recommend you start by drawing a 2-scale hand-drawn map of the area. I like to draw this on graph paper, and you can use this then to draw out your planting plan, keeping in mind the mature sizes of plants as you draw things onto the plan. Next, stand in the places in your yard where you're often spending time or look out important doors or windows. From there, draw out lines on your map between you and the source of the privacy problems. Just little straight lines right from you to the privacy problem. And as these lines build up, it can help you prioritize privacy plantings. You could place faster growing evergreen elements there where all of these lines kind of overlap. Or even consider a fast privacy solution in one of those areas. I have a list of suggestions in a previous video. I'll link to that in the top right corner right now, as well as in the description below if you want to check that out. When planting a privacy hedge or screen, I highly recommend planting a naturalized mix of plants. Having a diversity of privacy plants built into your landscape plan provides extra security if one fails, right? So if you plant the same species of a shrub or tree in a row and there's an unexpected climate change development, there's a new pest, there's a new disease, or just something happens that causes them to die, you lose some of the branches. If you have the same species, there's a chance you could lose all of them. And I see this all the time as a landscape designer. I'm called in to help either save these plants or come up with a solution to minimize the loss of privacy. There's typically very little I can do besides recommend diversifying your privacy plant portfolio. So it's best to have a diversity right from the start. Include totally different plant types and plant families if you can. Just because you have a diversity or a mix of naturalized plantings, it doesn't mean it has to look messy. First, selecting beautiful plants right from the start makes it difficult to go wrong. And next, you can tie a design together by including a few cohesive repeating elements. For example, include a diversity of evergreen trees for highest priority year-round privacy, but then include multiples of some kind of accent plant to tie it all together. Include this in odd numbers too, like in 3s or 5s, and stagger this plant out throughout the privacy screen, throughout the garden. It will provide a sense of intention and cohesion and kind of tie the design together. You could also increase the diversity even more while still achieving cohesion by including different plants with similar colors or characteristics. Think purple trees. You could go with purple trees and shrubs, anything with purple, and plant that in 3s and 5s throughout the landscape. From a distance, it's going to look really cohesive and intentional. I highly recommend planting mixed or varied privacy hedges. Think like swaths of plants or islands of plants or mixed hedgerows. All too often, someone will plant a pattern and then one of those plants will just rebel against the pattern, or something will die. One of the plants will grow way too big, or it'll stay really small. It just seems that trying to attempt a pattern in landscape design in general, it doesn't always go well. At the same time, this doesn't mean your yard needs to look chaotic. You can achieve a very intentional, beautiful, neat look without this perfectly repeating pattern. If you are someone who wants a more neat, formal, organized look in your landscape, in addition to the cohesion trick I mentioned previously, a trick is to have a diversified privacy planting, but a neat, straight, clean border around the edge of the planting area. It creates this sense of order visually, or some other kind of edging, right? Something that just creates this visual sense of order without requiring the plants to be the source of this order. You can also diversify your taller privacy plantings, the ones that are more important, and have the less important lower layer of plants, or even some accent plants in a pattern, just in a less critical part of your design area, right? You could even have a pattern of plants in a different part of your yard, and then let the privacy planting just be about privacy. Then, if a pattern of smaller plants doesn't work out for some reason, it's just less of a loss. You can give these rebellious plants away to someone who appreciates their free spirits and try another plant pattern without losing too many years of investment or losing the solution to your privacy problems. I mentioned a lower layer of plants. Consider layering your privacy plantings both vertically and horizontally whenever possible. I like to stagger and overlap plantings, keeping mature size and growth rate in mind. This means that if you were to have one plant that isn't as happy, a slight overlap of privacy plantings means that another plant could fill in and close the space, or it'll at least cover a third or half of the privacy problem thanks to the overlap. Many plants are happy to grow in layers, and if you think about it, this is how many plants grow out in the wild without humans planting them and caring for them. What's particularly cool about a privacy hedgerow is that it mimics the edge of a forest, which is a fantastic opportunity. And you'll notice that in many, not all, but in many ecosystems, the edges or transitions between plant communities have a lot of diversity. So if you've ever walked into like a mature forest, for example, the edge has a bunch of different plants and then it kind of opens up inside. There are still layers of understory plants inside, ground cover plants inside, but of course the edges tend to have a different look to them or a different plant community. This is often because there's more light, there's other resources for the understory plants to reach, and different plants are just suited for this environment. If you think about it, this is a great coincidence because these parts of the ecosystems create a good bit of privacy. And this is a generalization, but it is something to just notice, keep in mind, as you're considering plant possibilities. Taller and larger trees can often be pruned to grow overhead than layer understory trees or shrubs, all the way down, different sizes and layers. Learn what different plants like and place them in a layer accordingly. Be sure to consider mature plant size and growth rate over time as well. Mature plant size is complicated, and I talk about it in detail. I have a whole video about that, which I'll link in the top corner again and in the description below. You can overlap the mature plant sizes a bit, plant a bit more densely for the privacy benefits, but don't overcrowd just because you're in a hurry for privacy. Also, don't be afraid to use deciduous plants or plants that lose their leaves in the winter in privacy plantings. Even the bare winter branches can provide quite a bit of privacy, especially if you're layering plants. And the reality is that you're probably spending a little bit less time outdoors in the winter anyway. You're less likely to be entertaining. Just keep that in mind. I just like to point this out because your plant options increase significantly when you aren't limiting yourself to strictly evergreen plants. You can incorporate so many additional colors and textures and flowering trees and interesting barks. The sky's the limit. Just don't be afraid to branch out. Also, explore evergreen plants beyond just conifers or beyond just the standard typical green arborvitae, right? Arborvitae's great. We love arborvitae, but there are so many plant options out there beyond this very, very typical plant. I don't know how many yards I've been to that are just like a solid box of green arborvitae all the way around. If you love it, go for it, but you do have options. There are broadleaf evergreens, evergreen vines that you can grow up, trellises and fences, and even the infamous bamboo, which I talk about more in my last video. It's not always that bad, but it should be respected. Go watch that video to learn more if you want or if you have questions. There are conifers too, even fast-growing ones that have various needle colors and textures. So even if you need as much evergreen in your yard as possible, you have options. Be sure to diversify. Don't forget to look into fast-growing or evergreen native plants because you may have unexpectedly great options. Head out into local wild spaces and see what's doing well without any maintenance. Notice the existing privacy and what it looks like and what it feels like, and identify the plants that are creating this privacy. Of course, even native plants will need a little bit of attention as you get them established, but once they are established, because they're acclimated to your local weather patterns, they're your local soils, they're going to be less maintenance than some other plants. Plus, you're doing an incredible service for local wildlife, and remember that it's way more complicated than just having blooms and berries for birds and local pollinators. There's so much more to it than that. You probably understand that native plants, they do great in your garden for these reasons. They're good for wildlife for these reasons. They've evolved with wildlife for thousands and thousands of years. But I just noticed that fewer folks understand that the reason that this is so important is because some kinds of wildlife can require certain native plants to complete certain parts of their life cycle. The native insects that live in the leaf litter below a native species of shrub might be a critical source of protein for baby birds, or a species of moss that only grows in the branches of a certain native tree species might have antimicrobial properties critical for lining the nest for baby birds. The list goes on, and we're learning more all the time about the complex relationships but in our local ecosystems. It may be worth it to have a slightly less than perfect privacy hedge to know that you're undoing the harm of habitat loss and you're supporting local living things. Your yard is important, and wildlife is having to rely on backyard habitats more and more over time. So plant some native plants or plant an entirely native privacy hedge and learn more about the relationships between the living things that hang out in your yard. Of course, the principle right plant, right place still applies even with native plants for anything that you're planting in your yard. To determine if you're putting the right plant in the right place, you just have to do a little bit of research. And it sounds daunting, but it's actually pretty fun if you know what you're looking for, you have a checklist, and you know where to go to find this information. I created a free mini course, How to Choose the Perfect Plant, to help you do this. The mini course is about an hour long. You can watch it in parts or all at once. And to access the course, again, it's free. You just have to create a login, username, password so that you can keep track of your progress as you move through the course. I hope it helps you so much. Check out the link to that in the description below. Now I want to address pruning and maintenance. Neat, formally trimmed privacy screens and hedges can take a ton of time to prune and maintain. So just know what you're getting yourself into. If you like the look of it, you enjoy the maintenance, go for it. You do have to keep up with it though forever. You will always have to continue to prune it to maintain this really neat and formal look. Once you have a shrub or a tree that's been pruned in this way, it changes the branch structure and it can be very difficult or sometimes impossible to undo this. It depends on the plant. So you can't really turn it back into its natural shape. So just keep that in mind and know that you have options. Different species require different kinds of maintenance or pruning at different times of the year. You can also select plants that grow to be the right size as much as possible at maturity. They don't necessarily need to be pruned to be healthy. This is an interesting thing. Plants don't necessarily need to be pruned to be healthy. They need to be pruned to be healthy in the urban environments that we have created. We prune the branches that flop over, that look weird, that get in our way, that create possible hazards. And it's interesting if you think about it, a tree that's half rotten and filled with pests is an asset in the forest, but it's a liability if it's above your car. Regardless, pruning is much more minimal when you design your privacy plantings with the mature size in mind. Let plants take on their natural form. It's just going to be a lot less maintenance. There is so much more you can do to maximize the privacy in your yard besides just putting the right plant in the right place. Think carefully about how you lay out your yard, how you place other elements in your yard, how you design everything together in a cohesive way, and there are other fast elements that can provide fast privacy besides just plants. My mission with this series of videos is to provide you with options so that you don't end up stuck with just one privacy solution, so that you can save money, so that you can find the privacy design that works best for you and your yard. And welcome to Garden Project Academy. If you're new here, this is a relatively new YouTube channel, and I'm creating online courses and resources to help you with your garden project. So you can do more good things with your yard with this opportunity that you have to do some landscaping. So check out some of the resources in the description below. Like I've got a waitlist for an upcoming Design Your Own Landscape Layout course. I've got the free mini course. I've got all kinds of things in the works. List of video ideas that I've been working on. So please let me know in the comments below if you have any additional questions, ideas for upcoming videos. Thank you so much for being here. Happy gardening.